Hey everybody, I'm going to talk about a movie I saw recently called First Reformed. First Reformed is a movie directed by Paul Schrader, starring Ethan Hawke as what's his name? Reverend Ernst Toller. It's hard to describe this movie, like it's not a very simple plot. It's basically about this reverend who oversees a small church that's dwindling in numbers. And it's not really about that. It's about basically him. He is dealing with depression. He has things in his past that he's trying to overcome. A big catalyst in the movie for what happens, the plot, is that a member of his congregation asks him to counsel her husband, who's this radical environmentalist. And that kind of kicks off a series of things. I don't really want to get into it. It's a kind of movie that you really don't want to know much about the plot before getting into it, especially since some of the things that happen are a little out of left field, kind of, in a good way, for the most part. This movie I really loved mostly because as a pastor, somebody who works in a church, I think it did a very good job of being honest about religion and specifically about ministers and pastors and just what it's like to have that be your profession, especially nowadays when we have churches that are more and more churches that are getting bigger and bigger and thousands of people attending. There's a mega church that kind of at the same time overshadows the small church that Ethan Hawke's character is a minister of, but also kind of pays for them to stay open, basically. It's this weird, or not weird, but kind of honest look at how churches run today. So I really loved that, especially since none of the pastors involved, none of the people in, the religious hierarchy are depicted as like, oh, hypocrite, terrible guy, or holy man who just blesses people. Like, they're all just people. This is their job. It shows them doing religious things and also actual real life things that aren't directly a result of their religion. They're just real people. It shows the tough things that can come with being a minister, with counseling, with the kind of duties you have to fulfill, like funerals and just dealing or comforting grieving widows, things like that. It addresses a lot of that in a way that made me feel like they weren't trying to exploit Christianity, but depict it in a certain way that doesn't get depicted very often. And that's really the main reason why I love this movie. That and the fact that Ethan Hawke, his performance was incredible as the Reverend that he plays. It was like the movie revolved around him, this character, and his performance was great. So that was also great. I do have kind of an issue with the ending. Again, I'm not gonna like spoil it or anything, and it's also not really much of an issue as like it could have been different, but I don't know what it would have been. I mean, there were the obvious things that could have happened. Those might have been unsatisfying. It would have been like a simple bow on a complex story, but at the same time, a complex bow is also kind of unsatisfying. It's this weird, like, where is this story gonna go? And nothing feels like either what happened or the things that I can come up with. None of them felt like they would have really worked. So it's also not one that I could say was bad. This is a pure like interpretation type movie. Like if you understand what he's going through and can connect with what he's saying, you will think it's better than I did, probably. But I also can't say I didn't like it because it seemed real. It wasn't simple and it wasn't an unearned ending. All of this is probably confusing if you haven't seen it, and that leads me here. Go see this movie. This might be another one that's kind of hard to find if you live near any kind of like independent theater. You're probably gonna have to go to see it there. They're not gonna really show them this movie, as far as I know. It came out several months ago, and now they've been showing it a little wider. But if you can see it, see it. Especially if it's on Netflix or something. Definitely watch it. Especially as lots of my friends are, if you are in ministry. This kind of it you'll appreciate it more. But anybody should see it, especially if you love just real character studies in character, because that is what this movie is. It is a study in the character of this reverend who is battling depression and the pressures of his job and a shifting church demographic and all these things that are happening to him. So please go see this movie. I highly recommend it.